Hey, good morning. If you're watching this in the morning, sorry, I'm doing this in the morning. Maybe it's afternoon, maybe it's night. Good evening, good afternoon, whatever time. I want to spend today just looking real quick to help us kind of nail down this idea of like our decimals and their values so that we can start to make more sense of them, right? As we compare values of decimals, we really want to be thinking about like, what are we looking at? So I'm going to start here. I'm going to go with 3/10, and we're also going to do 1500s, right? Okay, so if we're really thinking about comparing these values, thinking about like, can we put in a greater than, less than, or equal to help us understand those decimals and what they mean, let's just kind of break it down and like look at it as a model, okay? So one thing I might do, I don't even say might, one thing I would do for sure is like, first, I'm just gonna like, I could stack my place values. Remember that this is a ones place and it's empty right now. Because again, decimals are part of the whole. So they're these little parts that make up the whole. And then I have the tenths place, and then here, tenths place, and here, hundreds place, right? So let's even put that into a diagram. Let's see, we would have the ones, and then we would have the tenths, and then we'd have the hundreds. Of course, that goes over it. Haha, you knew it. Okay, so let's see what we can do here. Hundreds. If I thought about like comparing these two, and I don't even know if this will fit, but we'll try. We'll make it happen. I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna do a little dotted line here. And this is going to be 3/10. So I'm gonna model that in the upper part and 1500s in the lower part. So if I'm thinking here, 3/10, okay, so here's what's to help us think about modeling. Like this would represent one now. This is one whole. Now we don't have any ones, so I'm gonna get rid of that. But what we do have are tenths. And according to 3/10, I have three of them. So I have 1, 2, 3. And according to 1500s, I'm trying to make that fit somewhere. According to 1500s down here, if we look in the tenths place, that's that first place value of decimals. So there's 1/10, and then there's 500s. Now, this is what we need to start recognizing and understanding with the value is that like anything, like the higher the digit in a place value, the more value it has, right? Just like if I had a 9 in the ones place, but then I had a 9 in the tens place, well, that 9 in the tens place is worth more than the 9 in the ones. Same thing here is, although when we first look at 1500s, right? When we first look at this, we might think to ourselves, oh, well, 15 is high. It's bigger than 3. 15 is a bigger number than 3. And in whole numbers, you're right. That would be correct. But with decimals, it's the opposite, right? Like the further we get from 0, meaning here's 0 in the ones place, the further we get, those place values actually get smaller. Because again, remember, it's these hundreds. I need 10 of these things to make myself a tenth. And we could break all that down, right? We could actually turn all of these into hundreds. Let's see what happens if we do that, right? If I took this tenth and I broke it apart into hundreds, I would get 10 hundreds. So actually just move this over here and you can see this would break into 10 little pieces. Now, when I put them together, it just makes 1/10, right? Just like when we do with ones and tens. So knowing that, if again, we think about how much all of these tenths are, if we break them into little hundreds, well, there's 10 here, there's 10 here, so that's 20. And we can break that one apart as well so you can see it, right? So boom. So here's 20 little hundreds. And then we could break this one apart too and bring it over here and turn it into a bunch of hundreds, break it apart. And what we see is we actually end up with 30 hundredths. There's 30 of these if I count them all. And they're all over here. So one way we can really start to compare value, and I'm going to erase these so we can see them. I'm going to go back to stacking them on top of each other, is if I have 3/10 and I have then just 1/10 and 5/100, which again, I could also take this 10th and break it into 10 hundredths and put them over in the hundredths. So now you'll see we actually have 15 hundredths down here, which makes sense, 15 hundredths. And up here we have 30 hundredths. So to help me compare that value, like to look at the different values, we realize that this 3/10 is actually the same thing as well as, put a 0 here as a placeholder, as 30 hundredths. That's one concept we're going to continue to look at and make sense of, is that 3/10 is the same thing as 30 hundredths. Because again, as I showed you, I took one of those tenths and I broke it into all those little pieces. So now that I stack them and kind of fill this place value over here and think about that, I can just say to myself, oh, well, let's look in the tenths place. Like, let's look there. And if I look there, I am just like, what's worth more? Right? What's worth more? 3 of these big sticks, 1, 2, 3, which is actually equal to 30 hundredths as well, or 3/10, the same thing, or just one of them. And so we start to see, again, when we stack decimals on top of each other, we can make more sense of which one has more value. So in this case, 3/10 is larger than 15 hundredths, even though at first thought, 15 sounds like a number that's bigger than 3. Okay, so let's play with that a little more. Okay, we're gonna delete all this and kind of let's play around. All right, so let's take another example and break it apart. Let's take, let's also be able to write 2 and 34 hundredths and 2 and 9 hundredths. Okay, so like here, now I'm introducing wholes. I have whole numbers. If I was to model this one, right, I'd have 2 1s. These are so big. 1, 2, right? And here's, oh, I was hoping I could like write on that. Oh, good. Here's the ones place. So we have 2 of them, right? We have 1 here and 2 here. And then we have 3/10. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, and here's the tenths. There's 3 of them. 1, 2, 3. So remember, we got a decimal point right here. And then we have 4 hundredths. So 4 of these little guys. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is actually what this would look like as a model. Here are my ones this time. It's modeled different when we get into decimals, as you can tell. And let's label this. We're calling these the hundredths. So this is what it would look like. And if I modeled the same one underneath it, right? Then if I had more space, I would show 2 wholes. I would have 0 in the tenths place. There'd be nothing here. And then I have 9 hundredths. So this is where we can start to compare values. Like, let's stack these up and see what happens. I'm going to say 2n, so 2 wholes and 34 hundredths. Or really, if you thought money, that's $2.34. And here's 2 and 9 hundredths. Or really, if you thought about it as money, that'd be $2.09. So I just want to compare place values. Well, the ones is the highest place value. So if I look there, they both have 2 in them. So they're the same value at this point, right? At this point, these would be equal. So I'm going to look in the tenths place because, again, a tenth is worth more than 100th. So what's really worth more? 3/10 or 0/10? Well, 3/10 is worth more. So that makes this the larger value. So 2 and 34 hundredths is worth more or greater than 2 and 9 hundredths. So this is what we're going to be working on and practicing, is really thinking about, like, if I stack my place values, I can actually make more sense of putting together what equality to put in there, greater than, less than, or equal to. And I could draw it, right? I could model it and look at them. And again, I could also think about them as money. So I want you to be thinking about all this. Keep asking questions. I know this is a lot to be working with, right? So keep asking those questions, and we're there to support you. And keep up the great work. You're doing great. Do not worry. All is well. Look forward to seeing your awesome work.